Well, thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is the second scene in my quick scenes series that I'm starting off here. Thanks to the person that gave me the idea. But anyways, this is another quick scene right here. I wasn't even keeping track of time here, but as I mentioned in my first video just posted today as well, I want to go for these quick scenes in terms of the compositional structuring of them, and as well as the coloring and finish of them. I don't want them to be lacking for anything, okay? I want them to be a complete visual statement in terms of what we're trying to say within the given piece, but we just want, I'm cutting out some of the minutiae that I tend to get lost in. I loved adding in a lot of different little details, and I really get lost in them, but I'm cutting a lot of those out, but they're still in here, and, I mean, when I take a look at the scene right here, I don't feel it's really lacking for anything. It has all those different things in there that I really like in terms of, a strong depth of field within a given space. We have the little gel pen highlights through here, and a full value statement of everything going from, the very light to, some darker areas within the given piece, and really kind of expanding that value range to, a pretty full spectrum, starting from everything from those lightest clouds up there to the darkest darks in terms of the black imagery used in the foreground there. Anyway, so these scenes right here are pretty good ones to kind of do a stamp along. I don't know, I'm kind of rushing through it, but it's because I've already kind of grabbed out all my pads and things like that I'm going to be working with for the most part. But, in all these different areas right here, we have some browns and greens and blues, and what we're talking about is we're talking about light to medium values for the most part. The greens I used a little bit of a darker value, going from very light greens to the darker ones. And then the browns right here are on the covered bridge and the path right here. I kind of mix everything a little bit. I didn't bring like greens and browns up into the sky, but we have greens and browns kind of mixed up within this given space here. And I also brought a little bit of that light blue down in this area, and you can watch as I do that in this video if you choose to watch it. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the scene. Okay, let's see what we can do about another quick scene. And I would say it's not for the sake of doing it quick, but it really is. We'll see what we can get down in the course of about, I don't know, like a 10 to 15 minute time frame. And we'll see how complete of a visual statement we can create in that span of time, hopefully. A full visual statement that doesn't lack for anything. Okay, now I just inked up this covered bridge stamp with black, and then I'm going over it, the green, the tree area with some green, and I'm going over the bridge and the structure of it with a little bit of dark brown. I'm not going for green trees and a brown, bridge completely, okay? I want that color to influence the black slightly, okay? Just so there's a little bit of a change in hue. Now, I don't know if sometimes it does show it and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I just don't do it dark enough, or I don't use enough of the pen work in there. And it looks like this one was okay too. Okay, so you can see a little bit of green in there, and there's a tinge of brown in here. It just looks like black here, but if I didn't do it in that color, you'd be able to test, if I stamped out a black one right next to it. It's very subtle though. Okay? Alright, now we have these trees out here, and I'll add in some additional trees. In fact, let me pause here and grab those. Okay, so I have the maple pear here, and I'll color this in the same fashion that I just did with the covered bridge stamp. We'll go with some black here. These are dye-based inks, if I didn't mention that before. You don't have to go with exact colors. Okay, I'm just going with, I don't know, this is a medium to dark green here. Okay, I'm going to wipe off the bottom of these, and I'll show you why in a minute here. Okay. I want them to kind of fade off a little bit down. Yeah, okay. I was really tempted to just go for a second impression here, but let's just not be lazy here and color in, wiping off the bottom here. And I'm going to mask off this bottom portion down here, and I'll stamp these trees a little bit lower, okay? I don't know if I'll get any of the trunk on there or not, but it'll just form, you know, those kind of background trees like that. All right, now I think this could use another layer of trees as well, so let's do that. I think some of the black will be on here, some of the residual ink, so I'm going to just leave it as is. And I'll throw this mask down like this, and I'll stamp these a little bit higher up here, like so. Okay? I mean, you can just build it up as high as you want it to go. It's all up to you. Alright, so we have a bit of our foundation. Now we have some area out here to fill in, okay? One of the ultimate filler stamps right here is the Sedge filler stamp. Okay? And I'll just fill it in with this dark brown. You can go with the green, you can go with the black, whatever. Okay? Put this down like this. And this road kind of comes out here at this angle, so I'll just kind of create this additional kind of angle like this with the filler stamp, and you can see where this fills in, right? With those additional grassy textures, and then we'll run in some colors in there as well, and that'll kind of bring that all together even more. Okay, one of the quickest things to fill in is some sky. I really like my cloud cumulus here as one of the choices. You can put in any kind of sky in there that you want. I'm going to wipe off the edge of this just to make it blend in with the surrounding objects a little bit more gracefully. You don't have to, especially when you're stamping it in a light color like this. There's no really masking needed because this light blue is so light, so when you stamp it over dark green trees, it's not as if, you know, the area that you stamp over those trees is going to be an obtrusive looking, you know, appearance. Okay? Well, let me just go for another impression right here. I won't even bother re-inking it. So see that? And I did get some of that blue in here, but I'm going to color in these trees with some green anyway, so that's not really going to matter. Okay, I'll do my cleaning afterwards. I do minimal cleaning anyways, but... Alright, let's get some different colors of green, some green tones. We'll say this is kind of a spring day here in this setting. We'll start off with some of these. Oh, and while I'm at it, let's go with a couple of the mementos, like a desert sand and a rich cocoa for that kind of dirt road right in here. Alright, so let's just start coloring this in. These are deciduous trees, and we can do them in a nice fall color scheme, but let's just go with some greens for right now. It's springtime right now, where I am at least, or, well, now it's officially summer now, and things are now officially brown in California, at least where I am, but it was pretty green for a while there with this kind of extra rainy fall and winter that we had. But in other areas of the country, I think you're probably still seeing some, you know, decent amounts of green out there. Okay, just kind of sponging this in. You can do this with all kinds of things. You can color it in with pens. You can color it in with your alcohol markers if you want to. I'm just going for kind of a general coloring here. Alright, and I'm kind of being careful to retain some of the lighter areas of those trees too, okay? So there'll be some variation, so I don't see it as like coloring in like a design that's made out of an outline, okay? There's no real lines here, which can make it harder for some people in terms of the concept of it. But, you know, in terms of the application of it, it really makes it easier. Kind of if you have just a real general idea on how you want to color. Now, my very general idea and really very minimal concept is if there's some areas of my trees that are green, I'm going to color them in, but I'm going to leave some of the areas of the trees lighter. So it just means that don't cover them up equally like you would, you know, like an outline design, you know, where you would fill everything within those spaces up, okay? Like those little shapes, okay? With scenic stamping and the coloring of scenes, it's kind of more of a kind of an oscillation. You kind of just leave some areas a little bit lighter than other areas. So it means just selective coloring, all right, and just retain some of your lighter areas. And where you retain those lighter areas, it will look as though light is shining on it, like it would out in nature. Okay, now we've laid down some pear tart I didn't mention, and now I'm going into this one called bamboo leaves. Basically, all I'm doing is starting light, and then I'm working a little bit darker incrementally, okay? So on this one, I don't know, since I'm trying to go, you know, do this expeditiously, I did pull out my, you know, some of my pads and my supplies beforehand. A lot of times I just kind of wing it and I'm grabbing, you know, my supplies as I go in these videos, but we do want to show that, you know, it is entirely possible to come up with a complete, you know, tonal range and tonal statement, complete with darks and lights and scenic lighting over the course of, you know, just a few minutes here. So you can do this in pastels or something like that, you know. You can do the same composition. If you're doing it in pastels, you might want to use a matte paper, okay? Something for pastels, colored pencils, watercolor pencils, something with a little bit of tooth for that kind of media to grab onto. All right. Okay, notice I'm going in the grass as well as the trees here. Okay, so see this some of my areas in my grass I'm leaving a little bit lighter, and some of the areas I'm making it a little bit darker. And, okay, if we have a bunch of trees here, just in general, you know, in terms of where to make things darker, I generally make them a little bit darker underneath my trees. You know, we can have those trees casting a shadow in the scene. Now, one of the things that I don't like when I'm doing green and only green is it has a tendency of looking too kind of hot, okay? So what I like to do is I like to blend my browns into my greens. So I'm going to put the browns into this covered bridge here. I'll put some on my road as well, okay? I don't know if any of you noticed, but I was going with a little bit of a smudgy road. But I forgot to mention that, but I was going to say, you know, even with little smudges and things like that, with this type of stamping, it's very forgiving. So I had a little smudge over there, but it doesn't really matter, you know, because I'm just toning in, you know, my scene anyways. So if you had little smudges here and there, it doesn't even matter. It just all kind of blends in at the end. Alright, so see this road right here? I'm kind of approaching it, you know, putting some color down and leaving some of the other areas of it a little bit lighter. And I'm bringing this brown into my green, which makes that green a little bit more mellow and kind of earthy looking than just hot green. Alright, so see, this is a darker brown. This one's called Rich Coker. The previous one was Desert Sand, if I didn't mention that. Okay. See how that kind of grass looks a little bit more, it looks a little bit more natural, and like I said, kind of more earthy looking to me. We still get the richness from that. Okay, now I'm adding it to this covered bridge on the side. Maybe the rooftop I'll just leave as is. Okay. Alright, so we're almost there. Adding a little bit of variation right there. Okay, now one of the things I do is I am changing my applicators here. Let's go with this Memento Summer Sky from the sky and a little bit of this water down here. All right, now let's just exercise the same process that we did down here. Up in the sky, instead of, the sedge filler texture, I have these clouds, okay? But it's still just texture up there, so what I'm doing is I'm toning in some of that texture. I just ordered some reinkers for my Memento pads, and this one is one of them, Summer Sky. A lot of the other colors I just ordered the reinker for, even if I didn't have the pad, but I'm looking forward to getting those in. Okay, this is a little bit dry. Let me switch over to this Marvy one, the Salvia Blue, which is much juicier, but here's what I'm doing here. See these clouds? I'm not toning all of them out, right? I'm putting some tone in them, but not just complete coverage, and I could bring some of this down to my grass, and I can put some of it down here in this little water area as well, okay? It'll be very subtle here, but you see where I've kind of left some of those little areas of light on my pathway, even where the browns are. This very light blue can kind of very harmoniously, I don't know, something, go in here. Maybe it could be a puddle on the ground or something like that after a rain. It could just be kind of reflecting colors of the sky as well. But that looks pretty good like that. Let me see, do I have a clean side of this? I was thinking about putting a little tinge of pink up there. Maybe I won't. Let's switch back here. Let's go all the way to black. Okay. Now, I didn't have a really super pale pink here. And that would look really good up there in that sky, just to kind of turn the colors a little bit. Okay, I'm putting some additional shadows below these trees. Like so. I'll go down here on my road as well. I'm just going with black. It isn't super dark though, because I am going over a lot of these other colors, so I don't get a full saturation of black being applied on there, okay? Alright, so we have that. Now, let's go in with some foreground here. Oh yeah, I was thinking something else that would look really good on here. Seeing this little roadway down here. I'm going to take some tiny rocks, well, that's the name of the stamp. Let's go with that rich cocoa here, and add a little bit of some extra surface texture down here. Okay, in the road, and that will say kind of road, won't it? Or, I don't know, dirt road. Maybe I'll go with some brown, and I'll also go with some black down there, so I'll layer my textures. Okay? Like that, like that. See that? Doesn't that carry that out that way very nicely? Okay, so I have my Reed's large stamp. Any kind of foreground, kind of more spindly looking imagery looks really good like this, okay? And let's add something very close to us into our foreground. And by doing so, what we'll be doing is we'll be extending our depth of field within this given space. It kind of puts us up on this, you know, a little bit of a higher vantage point looking down into that scene. And look at that space that it gave us, okay? And let's try something additional. We have these deciduous trees over here. Why don't we put kind of a nice overhanging branch to go along with it? We'll have our foreground on the lower end, and we'll put some of this foreground in the higher area. We'll say that, you know, there's a tree that we're standing underneath, looking down into this scene. Okay, I'm just using this portion of it right here. It's probably like a third of the stamp. Remember, kind of larger stamps aren't just made to be used in their entirety. You can use different portions for what you want. You can use more or less of them. You can repeat them. Or you can just use a small portion of them in a situation like this. It's a really great way to add a lot of spatial depth into the scene. It adds contrast by having something very dark against a lighter area in the background. And sometimes, you know, like in this case where I'm stamping it over my clouds, you're adding a textural contrast in terms of having something very hard looking against something very soft. So we're really playing with a lot of dynamics here. Okay, so there we have it. There's your composition. Now, what I mentioned in my previous video featuring a quick scene is we want to go in, we don't want it to be lacking for anything, so I like to go in, and this is a gel pen here. I like to add in, you know, some different textures into my scenes with a gel pen. It adds a little bit of a, this one you can barely see because this value of this, you know, in terms of light and dark of this green right here, it's almost the same value as kind of what we already have in there. But it is giving it a little bit of texture. Okay. But let's go to a lighter, I don't know if this one was the one that was, yeah, that one was pretty good. One of my gel pens was a little bit clogged. Maybe this was the one. It's a little bit more translucent. Let's go to white here. Oh, there's also yellow too. There's kind of a yellowish tinge in that grass in there. Let's see. I'm under the, I'm on the clock on this scene, going for something kind of faster here, but I'll hold this up so you can see what I've done here too. Okay, I can put it up in my trees as well. There's little highlights in those trees. You do, you make these trees like they're full of blossoms too. We did that in a recent, well, semi-recent video where a lot of these trees were stamped in with like white foliage, like they were like apple trees or something like that, and we put little pink little blossoms, you know, kind of throughout. Okay, these could be wildflowers as well. Kind of blossoming grass, whatever. It's kind of coming alive though, don't you think? You know, having these little things like that. These little features. Alright, let's add a little bit of white. I kind of cluster my little dots so these are like pearly everlasting or something like that. I can put little textures on my road as well. We have kind of darker textures. You can add little white ones as well. Or I can put little textures on my rooftop up here, you know, catching the light, reflecting the light. Some of my bricks or something, you know, you can put some textures down there. Wherever you want it to go. But look at that right there. So, I have this on my desk here. This horse. Ideally, you would add this in before you add in things like, gel pen dots, because sometimes this doesn't stamp over the gel pen very well, but we'll see what we can do here. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Or, here, let's use the VersaFine here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off the legs, okay? Just the bottom of the feet, so that when I stamp this into the grass, hopefully, it'll look as though it is standing in that grass and not standing kind of right on the top of it like it's standing on concrete. It's kind of, legs are a little bit hidden within that grass right there. Okay, but look at that. He's enjoying those sweet little blossoms of spring. And there is our fairly quick, right? Springtime at the covered bridge, and while I have this VersaFine pad out, let's do this right here. I talked about kind of layering your different values. This is, just taking this little concept right here, and the VersaFine's a little bit darker of a black than Marvy, so kind of I can have some really dark black here in the foreground, and then some lighter versions of it, so it looks a little bit more layered in the front, so you can have kind of a closer grass and a farther grass, a few inches away or something, like 5 inches away, but you can see where it's kind of a little bit layered in there. There's two different tones of black. One is the VersaFine black pigment ink, and one is the black Marvy ink that looks much lighter in that area. Okay, you could have done that for the trees. The trees, if I do another impression up there, it'll get too busy, so let's just keep it at that and call it a scene right here. I could have taken more time on this one, and that would be fine. You can add more, different tones, like, a little bit of a, here's a pen right here, and these are the types of little things that you can do just to, kind of add a little bit more time in here, which I'm doing, which is going against my, my concept here on this video, but, little touches like that, with a gel pen or something, or an alcohol pen might be kind of fun to kind of, bring in a little bit of extra intensity once, here or there to the scene. And that could be really fun, just scumbling around a little bit with that. But a pretty full statement in a, pretty limited amount of time. We have our background, clouds, our midground and subject matter in terms of the bridge, and we have our foreground in terms of this rocky area right here. You have your foreground in terms of the overhanging tree limbs and reeds, reeds down here, this grassy area. And then, of course, we have our focal point in here. And, the scene can come about very quickly. The thing that really makes this kind of stand out in terms of a complete visual statement to me, though, retain some of those areas up in, your trees, and don't make them all the same uniform value, okay? You can see this green down here. It kind of oscillates between a little bit of a darker and lighter area. This road right here is not just covered in with that value of brown everywhere, okay? And this green right here tends to be kind of more in the shadow areas, and then there's a lighter green out this way. It doesn't really matter what you keep light and what you make dark, okay? I don't want this whole back area of the sky to be just completely dark and the sides to be light, but, just a little bit of tone around the sides or something like that. If I did have this cloud right here lighter and everything out there darker, that would look fine, but it would still have that area of light in there, so you have this value range going from something light to like a medium tone. This is light to a medium tone out here. The grassy areas are kind of some lighter areas, right? But then it goes to the darker areas in some other areas. So what you have is this oscillation going from, kind of medium to light to medium light through here, darker, you know what I mean? So there's just some variation in there, and I think that makes it a much richer visual statement by having a range of different values and different intensities, I guess, too. There's some more intense greens, and there's some very dull greens. There's some, more intense, brown here. It's not real intense. It's still fairly dull, but it's much more intense than this area in here, which barely has anything. Okay? Here's a little bit of that blue down there, kind of reflecting the colors of the sky, or it could be a little bit of a puddle of water in here, from last night's rain or something like that. And then, of course, you have all these little bright little sparkly bits in here with the gel pen, and that kind of really increases your value range within that given space. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the scene. Another quick statement there in terms of the application process as well as the stamping process, and it can get you a really rich and, complete scenic statement, I guess you might say. Thanks for watching. If you got any questions or comments, drop us a note below, and if you liked it, hope you like, share, and subscribe.